Transmitter device activated. Coordinates set for Earth 2.
Hey everyone, welcome to a very special episode of the Earth 2 podcast, your weekly exploration of the pre-crisis DC multiverse and the legacy of their Golden Age characters through the Silver and Bronze Ages of comics. I'm Peter Watson.
And I'm David Steele. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us. We're still in early-ish 1975, or middle of 1975 probably by this point, and we're approaching the series' first issue special. And those savvy ones of you in listenerdom would probably have twigged that we're going to be doing 3 issues of this series because they deal with legacy aspects of 3 prominent Golden Age superheroes. And that's fine, we were going to do the 3 of them, but then Peter had an idea.
Yes, I had an idea.
It's a good idea. Peter's now going to tell us all what his idea was.
Well, let's explain what First Issue Special was initially. First Issue Special was a series that started in January 1975, and the idea behind it was that every issue has got the First Issue Special banner at the top, which means that technically every issue could be said is a first issue.
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost like a pilot series. It was like how Showcase was, how Brave and Bold was for a while. It was a pilot for new characters or for existing characters. And it ran for 13 issues. Now, the first issue of First Issue Special came out on the 23rd of January 1975 and featured a character called Atlas the Great. This is a Jack Kirby creation. And the whole idea behind this episode is I went a big deep dive into research, as I generally tend to do, giving myself tons of work, and I try and find Golden Age analogues for characters. Now, the task I gave myself here was to try and find Golden Age analogues for every issue of First Issue Special. And I was mildly successful.
No, don't undersell it. You were incredibly successful. There's a couple of things coming up that I couldn't quantify at all when you told me about it. There was one that you told me about quite recently when I was walking back. I was heading to a loadout and I was walking down Buchanan Street swearing under my breath because I couldn't believe what you'd found. It was ridiculous. We'll get to that eventually.
We will. That's not going to be in this episode. But yes, the very first issue, as I said, of First Issue Special featured Jack Kirby's Atlas. Now, we have covered Atlas characters on the podcast before, so we're not going to do much on Atlas.
Yes.
In the 3 Super Enemies story, there was a version of Atlas turned up, and also in the Javam story.
Yes.
I think there might be another story as well. He appeared in the background as well.
Yeah, because obviously the 3 Super Enemies was one of our earliest episodes released back in 2020, and Javam was the one that we did obviously just before the launch of the Shazam ongoing, so you should be able to find those in the back catalogue quite easily. Might link to them at some point in the socials this week. And of course we probably talked about how the Jack Kirby version of Atlas was brought back with James Robinson, who else?
Indeed,
and used in the Superman books in the 2000s. Mm-hmm. So, you might be familiar with him. And obviously, like a lot of the other characters, he recently appeared in the series Danger Street, which was inspired by First Issue Special. Mm-hmm. So obviously, there might be some Danger Street covers and stuff popping up in the socials while we cover this series, but that's in the future.
So, moving on to the second issue. The second issue was a new feature again by Joe Simon and Jerry Grandinetti. It's called The Green Team. It came out on February 27th, 1975. The premise behind the Green Team is they were a group of boy millionaires who went out and had adventures with their money, which obviously is referred to as green.
Wait, was it ever explained where all the money came from? I haven't read it.
It was drug dealing.
Was it? Imagine it was.
They were illegal arms traders.
Right, which means at some point we're now going to have to find an episode, find some old stories where maybe Dollman comes up against drug dealers or Mr. Terrific comes up against some illegal arms raiders, so we can do a legacy aspect on how the Green Team got the money.
Now, obviously, this is kind of based on like the Newsboy Legion and the Boy Commandos, and it's a group of young kids, young boys.
Yeah.
But the spin this time is that they're all millionaires. So, I had a look back to see if I could find any kind of older comics that had the same sort of premise. And I came across Jimmy Olsen, issue 3.
Yes, Jimmy Olsen issue 3, which is published on the 4th of November 1954.
And the reason I chose this issue is because it has a story in it called The Boy Millionaire.
Yep. There's no point really telling you about the cover because it's not relevant to the story. It's quite an interesting cover. There's a bridge and some water and a car and a bad guy. If you Google Jimmy Olsen issue 3, you'll see it with no problem. So we're just going to jump into the story. It's the opening story in the series. We have an opening panel, Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, and a text caption sets things up.
What if you were suddenly given $1 million? It would be quite a thrill, wouldn't it?
Jimmy Olsen, Superman's pal, thought so too, but the young cop reporter learned that sudden wealth can also mean plenty of headaches, as you yourself will discover when you see how Jimmy became the boy millionaire.
Yes, this is a great opening splash image because in the foreground there's a tabletop with sacks and piles of coins and notes and cash, and it's all glowing and green and glittering, and it's beautiful. And we see Jimmy standing in a very special, very luxurious looking robe, which is his initials monogrammed on the pocket, is white with sort of red lining, as a red belt. He's standing next to an open closet, which is a nice row of suits and varying sort of stripes and checks, but all in a sort of green pattern. There's lots of shoes and stuff underneath, lots of hats. And he's standing in front of this open closet. Superman's standing there as well. And Supes is saying, "Jimmy, this wardrobe must have cost a fortune."
Superman, mere pin money. I must do some real shopping for clothes, or I won't have a decent thing to wear.
As he says that, Jimmy's checking his fingernails as if he's bored of all this money talk. Supes looks astonished, as he often does in these stories, let's be honest. There is a slow dissolve as we find out how we have got to this situation.
One morning, as young Jimmy Olsen interviews Agatha Ames, eccentric millionairess.
Yes, we see Agatha, an elderly-looking blonde woman, sat in a big chair with about half a dozen cats all playing around, and we see that Jimmy, with his pen and pad out so he can scribble things down, he's been assailed by a few of the cats as well. Agatha's in the process of saying, "How many? Dear me, I think I have 48 of the little darlings. Or is it 49? Do you love cats too, Mr. Olsen?"
Not this much. Have you a group picture of all your pets, Miss Ames?
"Yes, in this safe." And we see Agatha crossing to a massive wall safe which opens up. It's like one of those walk-in refrigerators that you hear about or something. It's massive. "Heavens," Agatha says, "it's so cluttered with trash, I can hardly find important things like my cat photos." And as Agatha is trying to find the cat photographs, she's casually throwing bundles of banknotes out onto the floor behind her, and some of the cats are playing with them, and it's very ostentatious, if you ask me. Jimmy's looking down at all this money, and he's thinking,
Thousands of dollars in cash. Trash, she calls it. Jeepers, is she rich?
First panel, page 2, Jimmy's closing the safe, and he's saying,
I put the money back in, Miss Ames.
"But don't shut it. Oh, too late. I never lock it, and I forgot the combination long ago. Oh well, just a few 100,000 lost. Trivial." But then, the next panel, we hear from inside the safe, "Oh no! Oh no!" Panic. Agatha starts banging on the safe of the door, saying, "Eeg, wait! Sassafras is locked in. I know his meow. My poor darling will suffocate. Help! Help!" Jimmy thinks,
Golly, the only way to open the safe now is with dynamite, but that would kill the cat too. Guess I'll have to call for Superman with my secret supersonic signal.
And as Jimmy's amazing signal, inaudible to ordinary human ears, reaches the super ears of reporter Clark Kent in the Daily Planet offices...
Yeah, we see that Clark has nipped into a storage room. There's some bottles of ink in front of him there, and he's ripping open his suit to reveal the Superman costume underneath.
Instance later, at the cat heaven...
Supes arrives on the scene. We can see that Jimmy is fanning Agatha with a piece of paper. Maybe it's his notepad, because she's sat in a chair, and Jimmy tells us,
Agatha Ames fainted, Superman. Open that safe and let Sassafras out for her.
Yes, and Supes wrenches the door off its hinges. There's no sound effect, which is disappointing. We see the cat popping out, and Supes says, "Okay, Jimmy, then I'll be off on, slightly more important matters."
So, when the wealthy woman revives...
Agatha's woken up, she's clutching the kitten, and Jimmy is saying,
Sassafras is safe, ma'am. Superman ripped it open and...
"Nonsense. Superman would hardly bother with such a minor problem, and besides, how would he even hear of this? You did it yourself, you modest young hero. I'll have my bank place a deposit in your name as a reward. Just a trifling sum."
Later, as Jimmy receives a phone call at the office...
Yeah, we see Jimmy sat in a very smart-looking office chair. Looks like he had his feet up on his desk, and he's holding a telephone receiver, and we can hear from the earpiece of the phone a voice saying, "Mr. Olsen, this is Metropolis Bank. Miss Agatha Ames has deposited to your name the sum of $1 million. Hello? Hello? Are you there, sir?" And we see that Jimmy is in shock, falling backwards on his chair, exclaiming,
Trifling sum. Oh, ah.
And Lois Lane gets to her feet at seeing this, and she exclaims, "Look, Jimmy's fainted."
So it's a new Jimmy Olsen who reports for work the following morning.
I wonder if this was the inspiration for the scenes with Richard Pryor in Superman 3.
May well have been.
Who can say? You can see that it's a busy Metropolis sidewalk. Massive, big, fancy car, two-tone, sort of dark red and gold, and a chauffeur in a red uniform, tunic and brown boots is standing opening the door for a very dapper-looking Jimmy Olsen to step out of the car the following morning. So you got straight on the spending. This is great. As Jimmy gets out of the car, he's saying,
"Henshaw, my good man, I see a scratch in the fender at least an inch long, so turn in the car. Find something more expensive too. Nothing as cheap-looking as this one."
And Henshaw salutes and says, "Yes, sir."
And up in the office...
You see Jimmy ostentatiously... He looks like the Riddler, actually.
He does, yes.
Because he's dressed in green, he has a green hat on, his umbrella tucked under his arm. We see Perry White emerging from his office and saying,
"Jimmy, what's the big idea of showing up at noon for your job?"
And we see that Jimmy is just casually throwing money into the bin, it looks like here, as he says,
"What job? My dear Mr. White, just counting my money will be a full-time job. I say, this $1,000 bill is soiled."
Yep, and that's what he does. He tosses that $1,000 bill into the bin.
"Now I must visit my bank for more pocket money. So long, slaves."
And we see one lad smiling broadly as Jimmy goes with one of those little visors that people probably used to wear in newspaper offices. And Lois and Clark watch him go. Lois says, "He'll need a new hat, 10 sizes larger. All that money went to his head." And Clark says, "He's a good kid at heart, Lois. Sudden wealth just overwhelmed him temporarily. We'll call on him tomorrow and see if he's straightened out."
But next day in Jimmy's new apartment...
Yes, Lois and Clark have arrived. Lois looking outstanding in a two-piece red suit with a little red hat. Clark looks very smart as well in a sort of deep burgundy suit. Jimmy is wearing a very smart-looking green sort of tweed suit with tucked into boots. And we also see that he's had a sort of ice cream bar type thing or something installed in his apartment, or else in this new apartment. We can see at the window there's a very swish view of another tall apartment building. There's an ornate carpet. There's some stools set up at this bar. And Jimmy, is that a metal detector or a golf club or something? Or
Looks like
just
some kind of a large
cane?
golf club thing, I think.
So I don't know what it is, but anyway, we can see behind the bar there's a chap in a white blazer and a little white hat, a bit like the Thunderbirds used to wear, obviously, or or someone who used to work in the service industry in America in the olden days. Jimmy is saying to this chap,
"Jarvis, 2 super sodas for my friends. Remember, 25 scoops of ice cream."
Yes, and we can see that Jarvis is indeed delivering the scoops of ice cream. Lois is holding a piece of cutlery in her hand, we can see here, and she's examining it, and she thinks to herself, "A solid gold spoon. He's putting on a dog worse than ever." A bit of a slow dissolve here, or change of location. We see that Clark and Jimmy are now standing at an open wardrobe. Jimmy is taking in the dazzling display of jackets and clothes, and he's saying,
"Dear me, I have a terrible problem. A frightful choice to make, and I'm just frantic. Which suits shall I wear today?"
Clark, watching this, is thinking, "Great Scott, did he buy at a whole clothing store?"
And when it's time to leave...
Jimmy is saying cheerio to Lois and Clark at the door, and Jimmy is saying,
"I need experienced sartorial help if I'm to be the best-dressed teenager in town. So put that ad in the Daily Planet for me, will you?"
We see Clark scribbling as he thinks, "A help wanted ad for a personal valet? Jimmy's really going hi-hat on us."
But Jimmy is also heading for a real hard fall. Because that evening, as the sharp eyes of one Anthony Slick Slade spot his want ad...
Yes, Slade has got slick back dark hair, a striped shirt, he's got a cigarette in his mouth. Doesn't look like he's a good guy at all. You can see the newspaper advert. It reads, "Valet wanted experience must be true. Gentlemen's gentlemen." References from royalty. Wow. Apply James Olsen, blah, blah, blah. And Anthony Slick Slade reads this advert and he says out loud, "Hey, boys, here's a chance to fleece this kid who got $1 million dumped in his lap, like the newspaper said. I played valet to rich guys before when casing a joint for robbery. I'll land the job easy with my forged credentials."
Thus, presently...
And we see Jimmy, a short with very smart braces and striped suit. It looks as though Slade is fastening his cufflinks or fastening the buttons of his shirt, something like that. But Jimmy's the process of saying,
"I'm lucky to get you, Slade. How many kings are you valet for?"
4, sir. Not to mention dozens of princes, dukes and such small fry. Now, the diamond cufflinks to make you impeccable when those financiers call." He's fixing his cufflinks, that'll do. Right, a slow dissolve.
A while later, when the 2 financiers arrive...
Yes, we see Jimmy standing looking very smart in his sort of grey pinstripe suit. The 2 financiers, there's one with red hair, he got a cigarette rammed in his mouth, it looks like. The other one, older chap with white hair, hat in his lap and a blue suit. He's also got a cigar in his hands. Some beautiful decor ranged around, and Jimmy's holding a pamphlet in his hand and he's saying,
"Gosh, you say I'll double my money overnight on these stocks of oil, gold and uranium? I'll buy them all."
And the senior elder financier thinks to himself,
"Boy, could we take this fool kid over the coals, but now the boss'll expose us, so the kid'll trust him completely for a bigger shakedown later."
Shakedown, of course, being the direct-to-video thing with the Sontarans that Carol Ann Ford and Sophie Aldred appeared in when Doctor Who wasn't on television in the 90s. novelised by Terence Dix.
Mm-hmm.
Currently on sale cheap at the Big Finish website if you're quick. Might not be valid by the time this episode's released. The caption continues.
And sure enough, at the proper moment,
we can see that Slade has tossed the two financiers, who now look like completely different people, out into the corridor outside Jimmy's apartment. One chap's hat has gone skew-if, but Slade's in the process of saying, "Imposters! I checked your phony names with the stock exchange. Nobody will swindle my master. Get out!" And Jimmy's very pleased at this. He says,
Thanks, Slade. I see I'm safe from chiselers with you around.
We have another slow dissolve.
finally, a week later,
Jimmy is standing on a dockside somewhere, contemplating yachts and boats. He's saying,
Now, which yacht shall I buy? The $50,000 one, or... What's up, Slade?
Yes, Slade is approaching, and as he walks up, Slade is thinking, he's ripe for plucking. After all the sharpies and cons I steered him clear of, he'll believe anything I say. Beg pardon, sir. Mr. Superman said to deliver this note to you as it's most urgent. You see Jimmy reading the note in the next panel, and it reads, Jimmy, I need all your money. We'll explain later. Meet me at the old empty house in Oak Square tonight with every cent you have left. And it's signed Superman. Jimmy reads this, thinks,
Golly, guess I can't let my pal Superman down, even if it means giving up my luxury.
that night, as Lois Lane drops in,
You see, Jimmy's now dressed more traditionally with a green checked blazer, a red spotted bow tie. He's putting money into a large brown bag and he's saying,
Sorry to skip our opera date, Lois. Superman asked for all the money I have left, and I'm delivering it now.
What? I'll go along, Jimmy. Sounds like an exciting story.
but before they can reach the rendezvous,
And this is a great panel. I hope there's room for it in the socials. It's Jimmy and Lois walking along a rain-soaked Metropolis street. The detailing here is beautiful. I love it. Coming down cats and dogs, Jimmy's saying,
Shucks, forgot to gas up. No taxis either, so we'll have to run the rest of the way.
In a pouring rain, we'll be soaked to the skin, exclaims Lois.
and another soaking awaits them at the meeting place.
Jimmy and Lois have arrived to be greeted by Slade, who has a pistol in his right hand, and he has a couple of Gooden pals who also have pistols pointing at Superman's pals. Slade says, Thanks for delivering my wages, sir. Ha ha. Lois says, Your valet is a crook, Jimmy. He built you up to this shakedown. The Superman note was a fake.
But as the crooks open Jimmy's briefcase,
It's not cash inside. Slade is astonished to see and say, Huh? Only scrap paper here. Where's the money?
Yes. Naturally, I played it safe in case of robbery. I'd have told Superman only where I hid it, but I won't tell you hoods.
angrily the thieves lock them in the deserted house.
Yes, that's the aforementioned meeting place. We can see it's an empty room. Some cobwebs draping the... It looks like actually that point of view as if we're looking out through the fireplace. Very interesting. Some nice art in this. Cobwebs a go-go. Jimmy and Lois looking utterly drookit, as we might say in Glasgow. From outside the room that they've been locked in, we hear Slade saying, If you don't spell it in 1 hour, wise guy, we'll come in. Shooting. Lois then says, All the windows are boarded up. Nothing to use as a weapon or tool to get out, and no one will hear us yell through the thick walls. We're trapped. But where did you hide the money, Jimmy?
On me, Lois. It was ready in case Superman really showed up. I figured crooks wouldn't think I'd be dumb enough to take this chance.
And we see that Jimmy's holding up his coat, piles and piles of banknotes in the pockets and such like. He's got a handful in his hand. Lois then says, But we're still trapped, Jimmy, and no way to call for help. Jimmy goes to activate his signal watch then, thinking,
She doesn't know I can call Superman with... Oh my gosh! The signal cut off suddenly because the works got rain-soaked before. Superman won't have any guide beam to follow here.
Uh-oh.
Meanwhile, after flashing forth at the first brief vibration to reach him,
Yeah, great shot, Soup's flying through the sky and above the city, and he's thinking, Jimmy's signal conked out before I could trace him. All I can do is search in widening circles now and hope I stumble on him.
soon,
We're back with Jimmy and Lois in that room that they're locked in. There's a massive whoosh sound effect splitting air, and this makes Jimmy say,
Listen, that sound. Is Superman splitting the air searching for us? We need a smoke signal from the chimney, but our clothes are too wet to burn.
Yes, and we see that this was the point of view shot out of the fireplace a couple of panels earlier, because Jimmy kneels down at the fireplace in this panel, as Lois then says, And there's nothing else to burn except, wait, only the outside of these packs got wet. The rest is dry. Yep, they're going to burn the money. And we see Jimmy lighting matches and managing to cause a bit of kindling.
desperately the two prisoners resort to their one hope of rescue.
Yep, they're burning the money. There is another whoosh. Lois says, Superman went past again. Throw on another $100,000. You've got money to burn. You see, yes, indeed. Jimmy throws another bundle of notes into the blazing fire, saying,
I had, you mean? That's the last of my fortune, Lois. Why didn't I bring it in $1 bills?
Finally, just as their hour is up.
The door to the room flies open, and Slade and his bad guys enter in, firing their pistols, but
Bang, bang!
thankfully, in the nick of time, Superman bursts through the wall, saying, I saw your smoke signal, which Jimmy says,
Superman! Whew. Another second or one less bill and it would have been too late.
There's a bit of a slow dissolve.
And so, after Superman leaves with the criminals...
Yes, there must have been some passage of time or something here, because Superman is looking on as a still very wet-looking Jimmy and Lois are standing, and we can see in the backgrounds a random guy in a bow tie and another guy in a suit. No idea who they're supposed to be. But anyway, Jimmy, looking very sad and forlorn and disappointed, is saying,
$1 million worth of ashes. An hour ago, I was a millionaire. Now, I'm a pauper.
Lois looks a bit sad and says, Poor Jimmy, but I'm sure Perry White will give you your job back.
Well, it was fun while it lasted. I'll report for work tomorrow.
Jimmy turns out his pockets, and he doesn't even have any spare change left. He says,
Will you loan me car fare, Lois?
and as the last of the money turns to ashes in the grate, Lois looks on. A little caption reads,
The end.
Now,
Poor Jimmy.
my initial complaint here is that he'd obviously spent money on the apartment and the clothes and all this sort of stuff, so that had obviously eaten into some of the $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Had he been gambling or investing some of it to get it up to the point where he had $1 million again? Did he sell all of the stuff just to get to... Did he liquidise his assets, as it were, so he'd
He may have done.
have all of the money to take to Clark? Am I being too pernickety?
He just took all the cash that he had left and took that away. And obviously, I think liquidating the stuff is fine. Yes.
Okay.
Maybe he's paying a daily rent on these apartments because, he might change his mind.
Yeah. I'm sure there's another story I've read somewhere or experienced somewhere where someone has a huge amount of cash temporarily and then have to give it all back at the end. I can't remember. Anyway, it's an interesting story. I liked how Jimmy immediately went lavish.
Indeed, yes. That's exactly what Jimmy would do. He doesn't do anything at all by halves.
If you were given $1 million or £1 million by an eccentric old lady who owned cats, what would you spend it on immediately? What would be your first purchases, Peter?
Do you want the serious answer or the frivolous answer?
I want both answers.
Both
Peter.
answers,
I want
right.
Both answers.
Okay, well, obviously, it would be a new house with a big, massive comic wing that I could fill. That'd be
Wonderful.
great.
And your frivolous answer?
It would be Wonder Woman 59, the very first issue that features the multiverse.
Ah, interesting.
Yes.
I hope that wouldn't cost all of £1 million. That'd be quite depressing if it did.
Yes.
Right, okay.
It can be expensive, but just depending on the condition.
Like
Yes.
anything else, depending on the grade, availability at that time. What would I buy? Lots of Converse trainers and lots of pizza and probably a few more pages of original comic book art off of eBay. But I'd also give some of it to charity. I'd send my mum on holiday, but I'd fly to America to visit Ross and Steve and Brandon and Chuck and everyone. I'd do that.
We could host Earth 2 Con.
We could. Oh, we could record a few episodes live on location. Go down to Ross's house and record one live. Go down to Chuck's and record one live. Go down to Steve and record one live. I'd do that. That's what I'd do. I'd go to the States and see all my pals.
There we are. Fantastic.
Do some touristing, buy some comics, post them back, all that.
Mm.
Yeah, it's quite a light story, isn't it? I have to admit, I haven't read Green Team. I've never read the Green Team story.
No, it's fun. I've read all the first issue special, but not recently. It's just one of these kid gangs, except as I said, the spin is that they're all rich.
That helps.
It's slightly different from the Danger Street version, but that's fine.
Yeah, aye, because I've read the first. Ross and I were talking about it a few months ago, and I went away straight away and read the first couple of issues and immediately got distracted by other things or books I had to read for the Power of Three. Hi, Ken, if you're listening. Actually, in point recording today, Ken and I recorded a really good interview for a forthcoming episode of Power of Three, which no idea when it'll come out, but it went very well. Anyway. Yeah, no, it's a fun story. I like how it shows that Jimmy, I suppose, wasn't too concerned about holding on to the money and that he was ready to give it up. I think he was probably aware that it was maybe a transient thing, but it's quite poignant in that final panel of him looking at the ashes.
I love the idea of him buying stocks of oil, gold, and uranium.
That's right.
Yeah, that was obviously a pretty interesting thing.
Well, maybe that's a point actually. Maybe some of that did actually happen. No, he didn't because they were the fake financiers.
They were the fake financiers, but maybe he got it from someone else.
That's right. Interesting. We'll have to get a look at his end of year reports or something. So anyway, yes, that was Jimmy Olsen, Boy Millionaire. What happens in the next issue or first issue special?
Issue 3 of First Issue Special came out on the 25th of March 1975, and it features Metamorpho the Element Man.
Yes, who has been played for us in the past by none other than the irredeemable Shag Matthews.
Mm-hmm.
Will we get him to play Metamorpho again for us in the future? Hopefully. You never know. Who can say?
Who can say?
Who can say?
Metamorpho, of course, first appeared in Brave and Bold 57.
Cover date January 1965. I'd always thought Metamorpho was a late 60s originating sort of character.
Oh, right, no.
For some reason, but then you think about it, he was in some of the checkerboard issues of B&B or whatever, and some of his issues of checkerboard, so it's obviously before then. I've got literally a couple of issues of his own series. I can't remember if we talked about him too much when he popped up in Justice League. I think we did briefly.
I've got his Brave and Bold issue and also a full run I'm missing one issue of a full run of his 60 series.
Yeah. I did have his first appearance at one point.
Ah, okay.
I remember getting it on eBay years ago for bog all, and then I sold it at one point. Obviously, of course, I sold it. I can't remember if I had both of them, both of the B&Bs he was in, but of course his B&Bs predate the Starman and Black Canary ones.
Yes.
By a few issues. So yes. Listeners, what are your thoughts on Metamorpho? I only really know him mainly from Justice League Europe, but of course you were a Batman and the Outsiders reader, weren't you?
Yeah, I think that's where I first came across him, in the Outsiders. And obviously I've gone back and picked up a lot more since.
Yeah.
Now, the background to Metamorpho is he was Rex Mason. He was kind of an adventurer, and they came across this artifact, the Staff of Ra.
That's right.
And it basically transformed him completely into this being who can change his body into any of the elements or any combination of the elements and change his shape. Now, as I said, his name was Rex Mason. In my deep dive into the Golden Age, I discovered there was a character called Rex Mason in Leading Comics #1, the first Seven Soldiers of Victory story.
Right. Which I should have read by now, but I haven't.
So
anyway.
we're now going to do the entire first issue of Leading Comics. No, we're not. No, we're not.
Goodness. What's he up to in Leading Comics? Is this so? Are you suggesting then that this is the Earth 2 Rex Mason, and the Rex Mason of Earth 1 who becomes Metamorpho is the same vibratory type, equivalent type guy, but has a different fate?
I'm suggesting, as Roy Thomas would suggest.
Yes. Yes, that works for me completely. Anyone out there doing a dedicated Metamorpho podcast, make sure you go and do Leading Comics #1.
Well, Leading Comics #1 has been done by Ranger Gord on Prairie Justice. He did that, was that a couple of years ago now?
Right.
So yes, please check out Ranger Gord's Prairie Justice stories, because he is doing all the Golden Age Seven Soldiers of Victory stories.
Awesome.
Anyway, apart from that Rex Mason, I had a look at Element Men. And came across a story from Detective Comics 294.
Right.
Entitled The Villain of 100 Elements. Now, there are actually other characters that can transform into other elements. Mr. 104, the Doom Patrol bad guy.
Oh,
is one.
Yeah.
Although his name changes all the time, depending on the number of elements available at the time. Because he was Mr. 103 and became Mr. 104.
Yeah, that's right. He's, now that you mention it, actually, he is quite similar to Metamorpho.
But we decided to do this one.
Well, you decided. Now. And I did what I was told.
Excellent.
It's one of these ones that's like, Peter was like, I think we could do Road 2 episodes of first issue special in the same way that we did with Doom Patrol and Crime Syndicate and all that sort of stuff. And I went, cool, yeah, right. I mean, because I insisted we did that Beatles one a couple of years ago, so like, I'd have to kind of just agree, quite frankly.
In fairness, I did have a phone book sized dossier that I threw down on the desk, as I said. So look at the research I've done for this.
Yes, and I looked up from the important piece of paperwork that I was looking at and went, are you mad? Get out of here. You'll never work in this town. No, I enjoy the Road 2 and Portmanteau episodes, quite frankly. Listen, I hope you do too, right? And let us know. So yes, Detective Comics 294 was originally published on the 27th of June 1961, a mere 9 days after the 19th birthday of Paul McCartney, and a mere 10 days, something like that, before Ringo's 21st. That's quite an interesting fact. Peter's going to tell us about the cover. The cover's cracking.
Certainly is. We have the Detective Comics logo at the top, the Superman DC National Comics button, 10 cents, approved by the Comics Code Authority. There is a caption that says, Batman and Robin battle the villain of 100 elements. And on the right-hand side of the cover, there is a man. He's kind of grey in tone, but he's got some shimmering Freddie Breck aura around him. And he has a strange belt. He's pressing a button on his belt, and from this belt is emanating blue energy, which is hitting our Caped Crusader Batman, who doesn't look like Batman. He's been turned completely white and almost like fragmenting slightly as well.
It looks to me, looking at it without reading the caption stuff, it looks like Batman's been turned into, snow and he's starting to melt or something.
And Batman's thinking at this point,
The elemental man is now a man of iron, and he's changed me to soft calcium so he can crush me.
And at the front of the cover is Robin looking aghast at this situation.
He's appalled. He can't
Certainly
quite
is.
believe what he's seeing. To me, right, the first time I saw this, I thought, why has Batman been turned into snow, and why is he fighting Magnus the robot fighter who's all been coloured in grey?
He does look like that. That's very much like his costume, yes.
Yeah, interesting.
If you're aware of that look, yes.
It's the great Batman and Robin versus Magnus the robot fighter story that we always knew we wanted but didn't know we wanted. Maybe it'll turn up on Super Team Family one of these days now that we've suggested that. The inside front cover's cool because it's full of bodybuilding advertisements, which is always funny. Sort of thing that people still think comics are full of this day. We have a large opening splash panel. The large Batman with Robin, the Boy Wonder logo, and one of those little ersatz Bob Kane signature boxes, and some captioning.
Imagine a criminal who has the fantastic ability to change his physical structure as he wishes. Imagine a man who can change to gold, to copper, to lead, to carbon, to any of the elements and use this power for crime. This is the menace Batman and Robin faced in The Villain of 100 Elements.
Yes, you can change to gold, copper and lead. Sapphire and steel will be assigned.
Hey.
Great splash image. It looks like Martin X from the Guardians of the Galaxy
He
has
does
popped up.
very much so look like Martin X.
When Peter and I finish our Earth 2 podcast and our Dilates for Heroes and our Challengers podcast, we'll do a Guardians of the Galaxy podcast, and then we can use this as a cheap filler week when we say this guy looks a bit like Martin X. So this guy is basically, it's a humanoid figure, but his body is just glowing and glittering and shining as if it's made up of jewels and diamonds, basically. Radiant light is bursting from him. Bright, shining light. And Batman is covering his face saying,
Oh, my eyes can't see.
There's a member of the Gotham City Police Department nearby who's also covering his eyes, and he's saying,
We're all blinded.
Robin recoils also as this glowing diamond man is saying, Ha ha! The glare of light reflected from my diamond body will keep you helpless while I make my escape. We can see, as Peter said, describing the cover, this glowing diamond man has a black belt around his waist, which obviously has a couple of controls and buttons on it, and he's walking away and he's carrying this small metal handbag by the looks of things in his right hand. We have a slow dissolve to get us to page 2.
In the secret Batcave below their mansion, wealthy Bruce Wayne and his ward Dick Grayson don the garb of that famed crime-fighting team, Batman and Robin.
As they're getting changed, we can see Ace in the background. That's Ace, for want of a better way of putting this. Nice to see him.
Ace the Bat Hound.
Yep. Batman is pulling his costume on and saying,
Tonight our old friend, Professor Higgins, is going to show us the new invention he's been working on.
Whatever it is, I'll bet it's unusual, says the Boy Wonder.
Later, as they approach the Professor's nearby laboratory...
Yeah, Bats and Robin cut along the pavement. There's a nice fancy car sat outside. Beautiful building. Looks as if Carmine drew it, quite frankly. From inside, we hear a voice saying,
No, don't!
Batman, did you hear that?
Higgins' voice! Sounds like he's in trouble, Robin. Next moment...
The door to Professor Higgins' laboratory flies open, and a wide-eyed man, it looks a bit like Robert Pattinson out of the Twilight films, wearing a white lab coat with a very interesting black belt with various knobs and switches and buttons on it wrapped around his waist. He emerges, hurling the door open, zooming past the Cape Crusaders, and he says, Out of my way! Oof! Exclaims Robin as he barges into them, and Batman says,
What?
The car roars off. Robin and Batman pointing after it. Robin says, That's John Dolan, the Professor's assistant.
Quick, let's see what happened to Professor Higgins. Inside, they find the Professor unconscious, and when they revive him...
Yes, it's a great laboratory set. We can see some electronic equipment and various vials and flasks on a top of a bench. Professor Higgins looks a bit like a Mark Twain type to me. White hair, thick white moustache, wearing a white tunic, rubbing the back of his neck as he comes to. Batman says,
Professor, what happened? Was it Dolan who slugged you?
Yes, and it's all my fault, you see. I've been experimenting with a machine that can alter the molecular structures of elements.
The next few panels are rippled in a flashback style as Professor Higgins narrates.
Dolan was the one who operated the machine, and tonight he made a startling discovery.
Yes, the machine, let's try and describe it. It's box-like, there's a few levers and controls and dials. There's what looks like a kind of glass-type tube and valve situation on top. Dolan is pulling one of the levers on it and he's saying, Professor, the machine is faulty. There must have been a leak from its power source for weeks.
What? That means you've been subjected to power from the element converter all this time. It may have affected you. At that instant, as if to confirm my fears...
Yes, there's a weird burst of light around Joe Dolan and he shifts in colour. And he's saying, I'm changing colour becoming silvery grey.
Great Scott! You're changing into an element! Aluminum! Minutes passed, and then he began to change again.
Yeah, he takes on a distinctly yellow tint. It says, I don't remain constant as one element. I keep changing. Now I've become gold.
Before I can even attempt to cure you, I must enable you to control your changes so you can remain stable. Swiftly, I improvised a control belt from parts of the machine.
Yes, we see that John is now wearing the belt that we've seen him in already earlier in the story before we fell into flashback territory. Black belt, a couple of controls and switches on it. He looks delighted, looks wide-eyed, in fact, as he says, It works. It can control the altering of elements. Why, with this belt, I'm invincible. With my power, I can seize wealth, and no one can ever stop me, the professor thinks.
Great Scott! All that strange power he's absorbed over the weeks, it's affected his mind, made him criminally insane.
The professor tries to reason with Dolan.
Dolan, you must stay here. You must help me work on a machine that can cure you.
Dolan grabs a flask, waves it in the air, saying, Cure me? Oh no, I won't give up this power. Don't try to stop me. Come back to the present. The professor concludes.
Then he clubbed me down. Batman, Dolan has always been a decent fellow, but now he's a menace and must be captured and cured.
Right. We'll notify the police at once. Soon after, an all-points bulletin alerts the authorities to the dangerous fugitive.
Yes, we see a police car heading along, and they're obviously receiving a message. We see the little radio waves, and we hear a voice saying,
Golly all cars, be on the lookout for John Dolan. Approach with caution. This man is dangerous. Description as follows.
Hours pass, and meanwhile, Dolan recruits 2 jackals of the underworld.
Yes, and Dolan has got changed. He's now wearing a tight-fitting red coverall. Still wearing his black belt, and he has 2 goons in his employ. One is a square-jawed chap in a striped suit with a bow tie, cigarette in his mouth, kind of pale orange hat. There's another guy in a plain brown suit with a normal tie, not a bow tie. He has also got a cigarette in his mouth and a very neat moustache. The goon in the striped suit is saying, If you've got such tremendous power, how come you need us to work with you? Dolan replies, Even a king needs a royal guard. You can help carry away loot. Little by little, our group shall expand until all the underworld will bow before me. Eventually, every criminal in the world will bow before me, the Elemental Man. And the chap with the moustache and normal non-bow tie strokes his chin and thinks,
Gee, a king of the underworld. And the funny thing is, he can do it.
The following day, at a newly erected luxury hotel, a beauty contest is held in the pool.
Yes, we see a couple of bathing beauties, and one in a black bathing suit, one in a red bathing suit, posing away quite up the storm. A couple of photographers snapping away. We can see a panel of judges, all men of a certain age. The first photographer says,
Some publicity stunt for this hotel.
And his pal says,
Yeah, imagine. The winner of the contest gets $50,000 in cash.
Can you see where this is going, listeners?
At that moment, in police headquarters, Commissioner Gordon gets a call from an alert citizen.
Yep, Batman and Robin are there. When he gets the call, the commissioner is saying, A woman says she just saw Dolan and 2 masked men sneaking through a side entrance into the Gotham Hotel.
So, he started. Maybe I can get there in time to talk sense into him. Come on, Robin. But even as the duo races to the rescue, the Elemental Man touches a series of buttons on his belt's control panel, and...
Yes, just to set the scene here, we can see some of the contestants in their bathing suits standing around the pool outside the hotel. We can see the photographers, we can see the panel of 4 judges, and we also see John Dolan and his 2 suited goons. John is glowing bright white as he activates the buttons on his control belt, and he seems to be stepping towards the pool, thinking, Now I'll change into another element. Sodium.
Knowing that sodium causes a violent chemical reaction in water, he dips a foot into the pool, so that...
Yeah, the pool starts to bubble. Vapour starts to rise from it. One of the talent show judges yells,
Gas!
One of the beauty contestants cries, Eee! Another one exclaims,
Run!
And as he dips his foot into the water, Dolan thinks, The gas won't harm them, but they don't know that, so they'll flee in a panic.
But as the bandits seize the money, a figure suddenly appears and bounds forward.
Yes, we see that Dolan's goons have grabbed a black bag, but the figure who appears is Robin. Leaps in from stage left, bounces on the diving board over the pool, somersaults over the pool, and collides with the 2 goons, saying, Right on target! Dolan looks on, frowning as this takes place.
At the same time, a cloaked form blocks off the Elemental Man.
Yep, Batman gets in Dolan's way, saying,
All right, Dolan. Be sensible. Go back to the lab. Let Professor Higgins test you. Maybe he can find a way to cure you.
No, Batman. I like having my power. Now, get out of my way. I don't want to harm you, but I will if I have to.
In that case, I've no choice but to arrest you.
You fool! I warned you. That Dolan activates the switches on his belt. Batman goes to punch him, but Dolan changes colour.
Oh, my fist!
Ha! I've just changed myself into another element. Iron. And then with that, Dolan karate chops Batman in the chest. Oof! Your blows can't bother me, but just a slight tap of my hand can certainly bother you. And while this is all going on, John Dolan continues to glow with a weird energy, kind of similar to the colour of whatever element he's turned into. We arrive at the top of page 6.
Then, with the impact of an express train, the Elemental Man brushes Robin aside, and...
Come on, man. Don't bother rushing for the exit. I'll make a door for us. And with a crash, Dolan bursts through the wall surrounding the hotel. Robin and Batman can only look on in horror.
Following the spectacular escape...
Yep. See Batman and Robin looking through the hole in the wall. They didn't even run after them. Anyway, Robin is saying, how's your hand, Batman?
A little stiff, but okay. Dolan's taken his first step to crime. I'm afraid we're up against the most dangerous, most bizarre villain we've ever fought.
Afterward, in the lab of Professor Higgins...
Yep, Batman is saying,
Professor, you've got to do something, anything, before Dolan's mind gets worse. I've been experimenting with a new machine. A machine that might be able to drain the power from Dolan. Let's hope it works.
Next day in his hideout, the Elemental Man carefully scans the newspapers for possible places of crime.
Yes, while his two pals sit in the background playing cards, Dolan is scanning the newspaper, and he's saying out loud, Here's something. The new exhibit at the Museum of Science just received a fortune in radium. Boys, that's our next job.
That night, in the deserted museum...
Yep, there's a helpful sign that says Science Exhibit. We can see various bits and bobs. There looks like a model Sputnik or satellite hanging from the ceiling. And the pinstripe suit goon is punching out the museum guard. As the other chap in the moustache looks on, and Dolan says, That's it, boys. Tie up the guard, and I'll do the rest.
Again, the Elemental Man touches his belt control panel and instantly turns into...
lead. Yes, we see he's glowing a bright silvery grey. This panel kind of makes it look as though he's just phased through the wall in a Kitty Pryde style. It's very unusual. But he's approaching a glowing square chunk of something on a table in front of him, and he continues his thoughts. And since lead is immune to radioactive radiation, I can walk into this room where the radium is stored. Well, it's obviously the radium that's just sat out there on the table, glowing away merrily.
Where did you put that radium? Oh, it's over there on the desk. Yeah.
Well, could you pass me it? Yeah, sure.
I need something to keep my papers in place.
Can you keep this door open so I can get this trolley full of stock through? Yes, hang on, I'll just use the radium to do it.
Thrusting the radium into a lead-lined container, the criminal starts his getaway when...
Yes, this is a terrible panel. This is one of the worst panels I've ever seen in my comic reading career. They're all standing loosely floating in mid-air around this room by the looks of things. Batman and Robin arrive on the scene, and Dolan exclaims, Batman and Robin, again? Didn't you get wise yet? You can't stop me.
True, we can't, but perhaps Professor Higgins can.
Higgins? So the news item was just a plant to lure me here. And we see that indeed Professor Higgins is on the scene, standing with another fancy bit of equipment. It's a bit of a nozzle in the front of it, which looks as though it might be able to direct something towards anyone. The Professor starts to activate the machine, saying,
Yes, it had to be here where my new machine would look like part of the exhibit, so you wouldn't suspect a trap. Now, Dolan, my machine will draw off your power and cure you.
He activates the machine with a zzzt, and radiant cold energy bursts from it, striking John Dolan.
But when the power of the machine and the power of the Elemental Man meet, a strange reaction takes place.
Yes, it's not very clear from the art, but it looks like the machine is starting to glow brightly, in the same way that Dolan is starting to glow brightly. Dolan exclaims, Ha ha! My power is too strong for your machine.
Quick, everybody out! The condenser is going to explode!
Taking advantage of the moment, the crooks rush out, but in the museum yard...
Yep, the bad guys have made it outside to be greeted by a few police cars, Commissioner Gordon at the head of them, who's saying, Keep those headlights on them. Don't let them get away in the dark. We can see the bad guys holding their eyes up to protect them from the glare of the headlights as Dolan says, Commissioner Gordon, the police, trapping us in their headlights. Quick, boys, cover your eyes.
Swiftly, the bizarre bandit converts himself into a form of the element carbon, a diamond.
Yeah, this basically takes us to the opening splash image where Dolan has converted himself to look a bit like Martin X from the Guardians of the Galaxy, the original Guardians of the Galaxy. The effect here is that it's become a bit of a prism and starts to send the headlights back in the direction where they came. One policeman inside one of the cars exclaims, Commissioner Gordon yells, My eyes! Another cop says,
I can't see!
Dolan, in the midst of all this, says, Ha ha! The glare of light reflected from my faceted figure will keep them blinded long enough for us to get away. We see the two bad guys, these two goons, have covered their eyes and they're making an exit. Stage left. Batman and Robin emerge from the doorway behind them.
And as Batman, still in the doorway, staggers back.
Batman says,
"Oh, my
he
eyes!"
falls backwards into the room and Robin observes, "Watch it, Batman. You're heading into the room where the condenser is about to explode."
The warning comes too late, as...
Yes, a rather unsatisfying explosion here with a small blam. The condenser explodes. Robin observes, "Batman is caught in the blast and being bathed by its weird light."
Ugh.
Exclaims Batman as indeed he is surrounded by a little radiant burst of blue and white energy. Very exciting.
Afterward, as the stunned crime fighter regains consciousness...
Yeah, we see Batman sitting up, rubbing his head. Commissioner Gordon, at least it looks like Commissioner Gordon. Or is it Ronnie Barker? Not very clear in this panel. Robin is saying, "Batman, are you all right?"
I think so, but I feel a little strange.
Suddenly...
Yes, there's a burst of crimson energy and Robin exclaims, "Holy smoke! Batman's changing colour. He's getting red." Professor Higgins says,
More than that, he's becoming metallic. A man of copper.
yes, we see that Batman is indeed taking a bright red tint. Commissioner Gordon can't quite believe his eyes. Professor Higgins continues in the first panel of page 9.
When you were caught in the machine's ray, it gave you a mild dose of the same affliction as Dolan's. You mean I'm going to keep changing from one element to another? Yes, and I can't even give you a belt to control your power because the Elemental Man's belt was made from parts of my original invention and can't be duplicated.
Gosh.
Then this also means that my mind will gradually become affected like Dolan's, and that I'll turn criminal too. In time, yes.
Oh my goodness, the stakes are high.
Thus, reluctantly, Police Commissioner Gordon is forced to perform a duty, imprisoning Batman.
Yes, we see Batman standing inside a cell as the Commissioner starts to close the door on him. The Commissioner saying, I must do this, Batman. You may turn criminal at any time. For the good of the public, I have to jail you."
I understand, Commissioner.
But once alone behind the solid steel door of his special cell...
Yes, we see Bats sat on the bed, or whatever it is, and he's turning a very bright yellow, and he's thinking to himself,
Now I'm changing into another element, sulfur. I must get out, escape, and there's only one way. I'll have to wait until I change into a certain element.
The hours pass, and Batman converts from one substance to another, till finally...
yeah, this is really trippy. Batman has gone kind of slippery and melty looking. He's radiating a bright white as he thinks,
At last, I've become the element Mercury. Since Mercury is a liquid metal, I can flow out of the cell.
and this is an astonishing panel which will definitely make it onto the socials and definitely make it into a tweet. Batman still maintaining his form, but looking sort of like a puddle version of Batman, if you will. A metallic Batman puddle starts to flow under the doorway of the cell. Puts me in mind of one member of the Metal Men.
Hey, Doc, did I ever tell you that mercury is the only metal that's liquid at room temperature?
There's a slow dissolve. Well, actually, there's a quick dissolve.
Soon after, the alert goes out.
See a couple of stalwart-looking Gotham City policemen driving along in a car. A radio voice says,
Calling all cars, Batman has escaped jail. He must be recaptured.
the policeman who's driving says, "Imagine, Batman on the lam. I'd feel awful if I were the one who had to arrest him."
Next morning, on a special telecast...
Yes, we see Robin on television. He's standing with a very smooth-looking gentleman who's in a checked suit with a moustache, hair slicked back. There's a large microphone hanging in front of them. This chap has a script, and he's in the process of saying to Robin,
Robin, we hear that you have joined the police in hunting Batman. Why?
"I'm doing it because even though Batman's my best friend, he's now a public menace." We then see in the next panel that Robin is being watched on the television by John Dolan. Robin continues, "As Professor Higgins explained, his machine's power affected Dolan's mind, turned him into a criminal. It's done the same to Batman." Dolan, looking on, thinks, "So, that's why I became a criminal, eh? Well, now I can understand why Batman broke out of jail. He's a criminal now too."
Later, as the Elemental Man and his hirelings strike again...
Yes, we see Dolan, taking another metallic form, bursting through a brick wall with a crash as he says to his two goons, "In my iron form, I can smash right into this art museum and steal their most priceless painting."
But as the bandit seizes the painting...
Yeah, there's a bit of a narrative leap here, I believe, between these two panels. We see Dolan in his iron form, but in front of him, also in an iron-looking form, swiping this painting out of his hand. It's a painting of a very attractive lady, but looks things. It's Batman, who's saying,
I want that painting for myself, and don't try to stop me. I'm iron too, and as strong as you are.
And this prompts John Dolan's mustachioed, normal tie-wearing skinny goon to observe,
Gee, Batman hijacking the painting from us.
You forget, Batman. With my belt, I can control your changes. Dolan activates the button on his belt. Blue energy bursts from it, striking Batman and turning him all white and crumbly. Dolan continues, I've just turned you into calcium, which is much softer than iron. Now, hand back that painting, or I'll crush you.
Okay, you win. But why should we fight each other when we can work together? Don't forget, I know where many valuables are stored, and how they're guarded.
The goon takes the painting back from Batman as Dolan replies, True, you could lead us to plenty of loot, but how do I know I can trust you?
Just then comes an urgent plea.
Yep, the boy Wonder arrives in the scene, pleading, and he says, No, Batman, don't join up with the Elemental Man. Batman thinks,
Robin, he must have spotted me and trailed me here.
Robin puts up his dukes in the next panel saying, I'll stop you from becoming a crook, even if I have to fight you to stop you.
Oh yeah? I'll show you, you little brat. Elemental Man, quick! Turn me back to iron so I can slug this kid.
Dolan activates the buttons on his device, and we see the beam striking Batman and him starting to change as Dolan thinks, This is a good time to test Batman. If he doesn't hit Robin, then I'll know he's only pretending to throw in with me.
Next instant,
Batman indeed does punch Robin, saying,
There, small fry. Maybe now you'll stop bothering me.
As he strikes Robin, Dolan looks on, smiling, and thinks, He actually did it. Yes, sir. It looks like Batman and I are a team from now on. Robin's down on the ground, out for the count in the first panel of page 12 as Batman says,
Let's get started. I'm going to take you to a place where there's a fortune in diamonds.
Okay, Batman. Lead the way.
Some time later...
Yes, Batman's on the top of a building, and we see Dolan and his goons climbing up the ladder on the side of the building, as Dolan is saying, Why are we going there by way of the roof?
Because the jewellery company keeps its stock of diamonds on the top floor. Give me your hand, I'll help you up. As their hands clasp, nearby, another hand clasps a switch.
Yes, we see them gripping hands, supposedly so Batman can help him up, but then there's a small jaggedy inset panel of a hand wearing a lab coat, pulling a lever.
Instantly, the figures of Batman and the Elemental Man are transfixed by crackling energy.
Yes, we get a massive zzz, an exchange of what looks like electricity around their hands, and Dolan yells, Yay!
And when the force ebbs away...
A door opens in the roof of the building, and we see Professor Higgins and Robin with another kind of machine. Dolan, looks like he's been changed back to normal at this point, exclaims, Professor Higgins, you were hiding here. The machine, you rebuilt it.
Yes, the machine you nearly destroyed because your power was too strong for it. Batman later realized that if he could draw off some of your power, then the machine would be stronger than you. Because of that, Batman broke out of jail and came to me with his plan. We all pretended the power had already changed him into a criminal like you, so he could lure you here. When he grabbed your hand, it was just like completing an electrical circuit.
Bats picks up the explanations here, saying,
Right, because I never had as much power as you, the machine easily extracted my power. In turn, your power flowed through me, and from me into that machine, so that soon the machine drained us both of power. Now you're back to normal, Dolan. You no longer feel criminal, and that reminds me, we've got some unsettled business with your ex-stooges.
Yep, chap with the striped suit and bow tie, another chap look a bit concerned at this. Pinstripe suit and bow tie says, we got so interested in what was going on, we forgot to scram. Let's get out of here.
It is then that an ex-criminal joins in fighting crime.
Cracking shot here of Batman flipping the pinstripe suit-wearing goon up into the air as Dolan punches out the plain-suited goon, saying, Maybe I can't change to iron anymore, but my fist can still hit as hard. As Batman says,
Speaking of changes, let's change these crooks to convicts. And so, later, after that change has been made,
we see Higgins and Dolan, arm in arm, smiling broadly in the doorway of Professor Higgins' laboratory as Robin and Batman take their leave. Robin, waving back to them, says, Now it's time for us to make one more change, eh, Batman? And Batman thinks,
Yes, the change back to our other identities, Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson.
And the caption reads,
The end.
Well, that was interesting. Very twisty-turny.
I enjoyed that immensely. That was great fun.
Almost functions as a Metal Men pilot.
Yeah.
As well as a Metamorpho prototype story, doesn't it?
Yeah. I've got a few wee quibbles about some of the signs in it.
Go ahead.
When you were in high school science class, did you ever do the sodium pellets in the water routine?
I've got a memory of Dr. McCallum throwing some magnesium into water and causing massive explosions.
Okay, well,
you probably didn't do that nowadays, I don't think.
Yeah, well, we had that, and I'll be honest, if I was made of sodium, I would not be putting my foot into the pool because it would basically pretty much go bang straight away, and obviously I wouldn't have much of a foot left.
That's fair. Yeah. How would I answer? I don't know. Maybe he does firmly put his foot in. Maybe he just touches it enough to start off the reaction in the water. Maybe part of his foot even boils off because the bubbling and seething continues at the next page. It's very interesting.
Maybe he's got half a foot for the rest of it, and he's left with that.
Yeah, I don't know. No, you can. Well.
An interesting point is also that Metamorpho obviously changes shape as well as his actual chemical makeup.
Yeah, I mean, the clue's in the question, isn't it? Metamorpho.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas this guy just changes into whichever element it is, yeah. So he's less versatile. And also, it's changed by a button on a belt. How many buttons are on this belt, by the way?
Yeah, it looks like it's a good 6 or 7. They must do different things. I mean, I liked when he sort of said how he had to cannibalise the machine to make the belt, so he couldn't, fix things straight away. That was quite interesting.
That was good.
It felt like a very traditional Batman story. In some ways, like, if they hadn't cured him, you can imagine this Elemental Man joining Batman's Rogues Gallery and becoming a recurring sort of villain. Maybe if, say, for example, Professor Higgins had died and the secret of curing him died with him or something, that would have been...
Yeah, that'd been quite fun.
Worked, I suppose. It was a nice little run around. Commissioner Gordon taking part was fun. So this was published 61. So that's a few years before Metamorpho. It's possible that whoever created Metamorpho might have read this. I suppose. I mean, does this predate the Metal Men as well?
Yes, it does. It does.
Right.
So
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who can say?
Who can say?
We'll never know. No, that was interesting, and I liked obviously when he looked like Martin X. Because he looked an awful lot like Martin X.
I know. I wonder if he was inspiration for Martin X.
Who can say? We can only speculate. Comic book archaeology, all we can do is postulate. Interesting. Well, let's think about it. Didn't Arnold Drake write the first Guardian story? And he worked on...
Doom Patrol, so that's Mr. 104. Yeah.
I don't know. Did Arnold maybe factor a few of these things in? Did he have much involvement would he have had in the designing of Martin X? I have no idea. But it's nice to sort of speculate, I suppose.
Certainly is.
No, it's a fun story. We've got to take the chance when we can to do the old school Batman stories.
I know.
I know we've got plans vaguely to do some more Batman and Superman themed
there will be
little runs in the future as we get closer to the end of the multiverse or the end of the pre-crisis multiverse, but we'll see what happens.
Any excuse to bring out my Adam West impersonation.
Yeah, it was fun. It would have been really interesting to imagine all of the Adam West style stories done with the Kevin Conroy voice. Maybe, but it would be madness to record one story with one voice and then do it again with another voice, wouldn't it?
It would be madness to do that.
On that bombshell, we shall move to the next issue of First Issue Special. So we come to our final story for this particular Road to the First Issue Special episode, and this final one we're doing this week. This particular story is probably the reason, well, it is the reason why we've ended up doing these Road to First Issue Special episodes. Isn't that right, Peter?
Yes, it is. Inspired by issue 4 of First Issue Special, which famously features the lead character, Lady Cop.
Yes, I remember buying that issue First Issue Special at a Comic Mart 2001. There you go.
And the notorious thing about Lady Cop is it's the first Comic Code approved comic that mentions, as the vernacular was then, VD, or sexually transmitted diseases, as we'd say these days. Yes,
that's right. I remember reading that somewhere. It was also, out of all the issues of First Issue Special, it's probably my favourite out of all the ones that doesn't feature a revived Golden Age hero. Yeah. It's a very interesting setup because out of all the series, it was the one that I was most disappointed it didn't get a continuation.
I know. The premise of it is there's a woman, Lisa Warner, who her roommate is murdered, but she's hiding under the bed as her roommate is murdered.
And she sees the boots.
She sees the boots. They're white cowboy boots. There's like a skull pendant or something hanging from it. Yeah, and the guy's talking about the Ace of Spades. So basically there's a lot of setup and premise. Is she going to hunt this guy down?
Yeah.
And basically she remembers all this, and when being interviewed by the police, the guy says, "Hey, you'd make a good police officer."
Yeah.
And she decides to join the police. And basically nothing happens this issue relating to that incident.
Yeah.
She does encounter this young lady who is going through a terrible time because she's got this STD.
Yes, we don't have to keep referring to that, let's be honest. It's a family show.
No, it's fine, but I'm just adding some layers. family show, but this is Comic Code Authority approved, so it's fine.
Yes, I know. Let's not labour it, though. Anyway.
But basically, the story ends and we're no further forward. Now, interestingly, Lisa Warner does have a slight future in the DC universe. She becomes chief of police in Ivytown and appears in a few issues of the all-new Atom series.
Oh, I didn't know that. Was that right? I've got a few issues of those. I'll need to have a look, see if I've got any of the ones that she's in. That's interesting.
Not many, but she's in a few. And also, the character appeared in the Arrow TV series as well, I believe.
Right. Interesting.
At least in the Arrowverse, generally. I can't remember if it was I think it was Arrow.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
So yeah, a bit of longevity for this one-off character.
Yeah, as we said, some of those. She's popped up in Danger Street, but I haven't read it all yet, so I don't know if Danger Street will have given any conclusion to what was started in her origin story. I mean, it's all out of continuity anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, I started reading Danger Street, but I'm still in the process of reading it. I will complete it.
Yeah.
But I'm probably about halfway through, I would say. And there's been no uptake of this storyline, so no.
Yeah, I think I said earlier, spoilers there, because I think I read the first 3 or 4 issues after talking to Ross about it, just after it had finished. But I'm now reading Tom Hingley's autobiography and sailing through that, so maybe I'll try and get back to Danger Street soon. But I'll still to read Absolute Power. Uh-huh. I'm beginning to wish I hadn't bought it all, to be honest, because I'm going to have to read all that. But Ross has been enthused about that recently, so, you know, I'm really, sometimes I feel that because Ross and Martin Gray read everything that's coming out in current, I don't actually have to because they're doing it for me. It feels like that. It feels like that somehow. But I really need to make an effort because I'm really, really out of touch with, you know, with what's going on. I don't think I think I've read the first issue of this current Shazam series. I've broken the habit of reading new comics. I really have.
There's a lot of good stuff happening.
The Justice Society book was about the only thing that I was keeping up with. Obviously, as we record, issue 1 has just been published. Mm-hmm. The blooming John Snyder variant's £25. Jeez, oh.
Gasp. Oh, well.
Anyway, I'll have to see if there's a way I can get that cheaper somehow.
Bringing it back to Lady Cop. Now, the phrase Lady Cop, I would say, is probably well known in comic collecting parlance, which made it all the more interesting when David and I were working at I wouldn't say call it a con, it was a comic mart. It was a back issue bonanza, it was called, in Glasgow.
Yes, run by our friend John Farman, yes, about 6 months ago now, wasn't it?
It was indeed. And as ever, you know, one of us covers the table while the other one goes out and has a wee look round.
Yep.
I went out and had a look round and went to our friend Hugh Campbell's table, and Hugh's always got interesting comics.
Yes.
Always.
I got a couple of issues of the DC Three Musketeers from Hugh at the exhibition centre. Was it last year or the year before? And I got an issue of Our Fighting Forces from him that I didn't have. It was like the first issue of Our Fighting Forces I'd got from someone in real life that I didn't have in years. Hi Hugh, if you're listening, by the way. Hello.
Well, I was flicking through Hugh's stock and I was stunned at one particular issue I saw. Stunned so much that I literally ran back over and showed you the cover before I'd actually bought it off of you.
Yes, and it was like instantly, because Peter and I have a shared mind in a lot of things when it comes to the Earth 2 podcast, instantly we both went, oh no, because we knew what it meant. It meant that we were going to have to do something that preempted the first issue special, because tell everyone about the cover to issue 9 that you got from Hugh for a very reasonable price.
Yes, issue 9 of Gangbusters, we should say.
Yes, published on the 9th of February 1949.
It's the 40s, it's a golden age comic, folks. Golden age. The cover, we have a star in the corner saying number 9, April, May, Gangbusters, a 52-page magazine, 10 cents. You can't beat the law. Based on the smash radio hit. As we've said before, with other things like Big Town, there were a few crossovers.
Yes.
With things like radio shows and things like that DC were publishing at the time.
Did we do a story from Gangbusters when we did the Human Bomb episode? Am I right?
We did indeed.
Thought we had, right. Okay, good.
Now, it's a photo cover. And we have a lady, it looks like she's in the back of a cab. And she's wearing a red dress. She looks like she's desperate to get out. She looks fearful of the chap sitting beside her. And outside the cab, there is a man just walking by wearing his period-accurate hat. Let me put it that way.
It probably is period-accurate because in 1949, he wasn't dressing up to look like anyone else other than a regular guy just out on the street. So
I don't know. I cosplay someone from 2024 every day. I don't know about you. Anyway, the thing that caught my eye was there's a button in the bottom left-hand corner that says, in this issue, Lady Cop. When I saw that, my jaw dropped, and that's when I ran over and said, we have to do this. A golden age lady cop.
Yes, and I probably was lost for words for a few moments, listeners.
You were.
I'm having an extreme flashback right now.
I remember the stunned look in your face. It was almost like only you could find a golden age lady cop.
Yes, in some ways, it's one of these things where it's such a ridiculous thing that's so timed well in advance that we hadn't decided to, we hadn't even started our coverage of First Issue Special.
Uh-huh.
Timed so far in advance that I instantly understood the implications of what you were telling me. That was a good day because Mick was there as well, and so was Gavin, regular contributors to the show. So hi boys, if you're listening.
Our Genghis Khan, our Hal Jordan.
Yeah, and Mick was one of the gnomes in the Seven Soldier story, and we actually got Mick to record his contribution after we'd recorded the framework. So Mick didn't get a thank you, so he gets a special thank you now, unexpectedly.
He does indeed. Thank you, sir.
God bless you, Michael. Can I once again mention that Mick gave me one of my two most prized possessions I've ever owned in my entire life.
Go for it.
When back in 1994 he gave me his Take That Local Crew t-shirt. So there you go.
There we are.
It was like a little ceremony. He came in to see me at Stateside Comics and I had to close my eyes and hold my hands out and he handed it was all neatly folded and I was just like, ah! Anyway, so, hi Mick, waving to the camera and waving to Mick for the benefit of our YouTube viewers. Right, we should probably crack on then. A golden age lady cop. Fantastic. Right, there are a few stories in this issue of Gangbusters, and this is the final one towards the end. So listeners, if you've got your copy of Gangbusters 9 handy, just flip to the back. Flip to the final story. The little Gangbusters head at the top and a large red logo that reads, Lady Cop. And the majority of the story is narrated by our star. Her name is Joan Jennings, and this opening image shows Joan as a policewoman. Oh my goodness, I wonder, because I recently worked for the band Joan as Policewoman for the second time at St. Luke's, and I wonder if I wish I'd known about this because I would have asked her about it. That just adds a whole other level, doesn't it? Which has only just occurred to me.
Wow, okay.
Yes, Joan in her policewoman uniform, sending a couple of bad guys flying. One guy she's flipping over, almost like a judo throw. There's another guy whose hat is hovering in midair, and there's another boy. She's grabbed him by the wrist, and her uniform hat is falling over as she deals with him. And there's an establishing opening caption, which reads,
Is the lady cop deadlier than the male? In the 141 US cities where policewomen are covering regular beats just like their male counterparts, the feminine arm of the law is regarded as an indispensable part of the police force. Many a hardened criminal behind bars today wishes he had never crossed the path of a pistol-packing policewoman. Especially one like Officer Joan Jennings, a true lady in blue whose exciting story is chronicled here.
Yep, and there's a little, as Peter would say, a button at the bottom of the page that tells us this is
a Police at Work feature.
And the opening splash panel we can see is signed by Dan Barry. So there we are.
Very nice.
Now, the majority of the story, as I say, is narrated by Joan. It appears to be in a form of diary entries, and we see the first one here that says January the 5th, and it reads,
Dear Diary, today I was mustered out of the waves. A happy day, yet sad too, for it separated me from many good friends. Exit Lieutenant J.V. Jennings from service.
There's an inset panel of Joan on panel 1 of page 2 when we see that she has kind of curly dark hair, long curly dark hair. And we see in panel 2, obviously the residential area where her and her fellow candidates, cadets, whatever, were living. And she's talking to a couple of blonde girls. And the first blonde girl is saying, they're all in uniform, the first blonde girl is saying, If you ever come to the coast, Joan, be sure to look me up.
Will do, Belle. Well, me for home to swap this blue for a flaming chiffon. Bye, everybody.
And Joan's narration continues from exit to...
Enter Miss Joan Jennings, civilian.
Yep, and we see Joan wearing a lovely red dress on a busy town city street. She's walking along thinking,
Somehow the old town doesn't seem the same. Or maybe it's me that's changed.
Joan's narration continues.
February 14th. Old job too tame. Girlfriends all married. Town dull. I'm tempted to take Belle up on her invitation to the coast.
Yeah, actually, we should probably talk about what the waves are. Do we know what the waves are? Women's Auxiliary something volunteer emergency service? Probably something like that, isn't it?
It was a naval support unit, I believe.
Right, okay.
Rich from Weird Warriors, if I got that wrong, please let us know.
Yes, History Minute. That probably wasn't them in their police uniforms in panel 2. That was them in their Waves uniforms. We should have said that, but
yes.
It's fine. We're coping. It's very late in the evening as we record this one, so give us peace. Right. Joan considering Belle's invitation, and we see her, presumably at the bus station. There's a very neat mustachioed gentleman behind the ticket desk, and he's saying, Sorry, lady, but every bus to the coast is full up until midnight. Even then I can't guarantee a seat.
Oh dear, that means a 6-hour wait.
And we also see, in the foreground of the panel, a very slick gentleman in a green striped suit, with a very neat moustache, a cigarette in his mouth and a hat, holding a newspaper, and he seems to have overheard Joan's conversation, because Joan's narration continues.
A young man, Jet Randolph, overheard my complaint and offered me transportation for only $20. He seemed like a nice enough chap.
Yes, we see in this panel they're speeding along and, take a bit of a sip of your drink because poking out from behind the clouds is the full moon.
Hey.
Jet Randolph can be heard saying, "This is your first trip to the coast, Miss Jennings."
Yes, I'm going to visit my friend, Belle Bradley. How wrong I was.
A bit of narration because we then see Joan in a state of distress by the side of the road with her handbag and Randolph hurling her suitcase at her, and as he drives off he cries, "Last stop, sister. Thanks for your bankroll. I'll be swimming in the blue Pacific by the time you hoof it to the next town." Oh, what a gee whiz. We arrive at the top of page 3.
2 miles later...
Yep, Joan's narration continues. She's walking along a dark road and she sees up ahead a couple of bright lights, which cause her to remark,
"What's that? Looks like 2 luminescent night patrol belts, the kind we used in the Navy."
Yep, and we see that she'd been met by a couple of police officers, I think it is in panel 2. A little bit of time has passed because one of the policemen is saying to Joan, "Quite a story you tell, miss. We'll see what the chief thinks about it."
"Thanks, officer. I'll give him a description of that heel and his jalopy."
And we see the policeman shining a torch which reveals their police car. They're obviously going to give Joan a lift to the station.
Later...
We see that Joan is talking to Police Chief Olsen, who looks a very curmudgeonly yet cuddly sort of chap, very jowly sort of face, like a cross between Uncle Dudley and Jack Kirby. And he's in the process of saying, "Your war training stands you in good stead, miss. You gave us the most detailed description of a person I ever heard." And one of the young cops standing nearby says,
"Our overnight accommodations aren't fancy, but you're welcome to 'em. We'll recover your money." Next morning...
Yeah, we see that Joan has been given one of the cells to sleep in. She's standing up, fixing her hair as 2 officers bring in a familiar, rough-looking chap in a green suit. The young cop saying,
"Sorry to evict you, miss, but we captured Jet Randolph with your money still on him. He needs your room."
And Randolph shakes a fist in Joan's direction, saying, "So, you put the coppers on me. Just wait till I get out. I'll fix your wagon."
I shrugged off Jet's threat and prepared to resume my westward journey.
Joan is bidding farewell to the helpful police chief. She says,
"Thanks for everything, Chief Olsen."
"Oh, thank you. When you reach the coast, you ought to join the police force. They need young people like you." The chief gets a close-up to round out page 3, saying, "Any healthy, active young woman between 23 and 31 will do well to consider such a career. It means good pay, retirement after 20 years, exciting outdoor work, and a tradition of civil service in the family." So there's a bit of a pitch
Yes.
to any ladies or young girls reading. Interesting. That panel will definitely make it onto the socials. As we reach the top of page 4, again, Joan's narration picks up.
March 1st. After mulling over Chief Olsen's advice, I decided I can fight crime with the same fervour as I fought Nazis. 2 years of college, plus my war record, more than qualified me.
And we see Joan in some sort of classroom situation. We can see there's a door with a sign on it saying Civil Service Examiner. Joan is holding a piece of paper that has exams written on it, and she's talking to a blonde girl who looks very much like Belle, who we met at the start of the story. If it is her or not, we shall soon find out. Joan is saying,
"If I pass this written test as easily as my physical, it'll be a breeze."
Her friend replies, "I hope I make the grade. Working as a nurse in an emergency hospital brought me in contact with the horrors of crime almost every day." Joan's narration.
Yippee! I passed and was sworn in. Tomorrow I start my recruit training.
And straight away we can see that Joan is getting stuck in. We can see some kind of physical martial art or self-defence training going on. Very dashing, handsome, young, dark-haired trainer bloke is saying as Joan flips a blonde girl over her shoulder.
Good work, Joan. Knowing how to break a death grip by jiu-jitsu is vitally important to an officer.
And one of the other women standing nearby with short dark hair, she remarks, "Down on the panhandle, we call that bulldogging a 2-legged coyote." So that's interesting. Of course, bulldogging a 2-legged coyote supported the Montrose Avenue at the Liverpool Lomax in their final tour. So dissolve and Joan's narration continues.
Future pistol-packing policewomen face the same rigorous accuracy tests as men.
Yes, this is the firearms training. And a chap who looks a bit like Major Glenn Talbot from Incredible Hulk comics can be seen saying,
"Remember, rookies, fire fast and always try for a bullseye."
And another one of Joan's blonde colleagues is standing near to Joan with her pistol in hand, and she says, "He's telling me I hope I can avenge my brother's death. He was shot by a gangster. Oh my goodness, what's her story?
Calisthenics, infantry drill, swimming and boxing were on the month's training agenda.
Yep, and my goodness, how timely. We see Joan and the other girls sparring with a couple of lads. Oh my goodness, one buff blonde boy is saying to Joan as he spars with her, I sure blew my buttons when I, a regular cop, was assigned to teach this petticoat patrol how to handle their dainty dukes. To which Joan says,
So, you don't think much of lady cops, eh? This will teach you the feminine arm of the law packs a wallop.
And this is another great panel that's going to social. She strikes him full in the face, lots of red stars for concussive effect, and a large exclamation mark comes from his gob. Fantastic. Joan's narration continues after another slow dissolve.
Then, G-Day, graduation day, and how proud I was. It seemed like only yesterday that I discarded my navy uniform, and now I donned a new set of blues.
Yeah, we see Joan looking resplendent in her uniform alongside her new colleagues, and there's a senior officer standing in front who's saying, as members of the Women's Division of the Police Department, you will be on probation for 6 months. You're expected to conduct yourselves with the dignity befitting the uniform of the law enforcement officer. That takes us to the top of page 5, where Joan again picks up the story.
I shared Belle's apartment soon after I joined the force.
Yep, see Belle and Joan chilling out Maxim. Joan's lying on the couch reading. Belle looks amazing wearing this dress, which is sort of like slit down to the waist almost, but has a little, obviously maybe a black kind of lace panel in front of it. Very nice. There might be room in the socials, there might not. Belle is saying to Joan, I wish you'd come along with Steve and me to the dance, Joan.
No thanks. After pounding a beat all day, I've got to rest my tootsies.
There's a ring at the door.
There's the bell now. Have fun.
Yes, a nice little ring at the bottom. Belle answers the door and we see, almost in silhouette, a tall, raffish fellow in a green suit. As the door opens, he says, Miss Bradley, I'm looking for Joan Jennings. I'm an old, friend. Belle replies, come in and sit down. I'll call her. And then, in the next panel we see, to Joan and our astonishment, it's a familiar face. Joan recognises him at once and says,
Jet Randolph, what are you doing here?
I promised to fix you when I got out of stir, remember? Well, here's something else you won't forget either. And he makes a fist, rushes towards her, saying, it was easy finding you. I traced you by looking up your friend in the phone book. Now I'm disconnecting your line so you can't talk out of turn again. Makes a grab for Joan, but Joan moves out of his way and then grabs him by the jacket and starts to pull him backwards, saying,
That's what you think. Actions speak louder than words. Anyway, happy landings.
And with that, Joan drops to her back and, using her judo training, flips Randolph over the railing that's outside their apartment. Randolph screams as he goes. He drops to the ground below, and then we see him sitting down with Belle standing in front of him, and Randolph says, oh, what happened? Don't tell me I was thrown for a loss by a dame. And Belle, standing there, says, I've good news for you, chum. That was no dame. That was a lady. A lady cop. At the top of page 6, Joan's narration continues once again.
March 17th. And if I knew what was in store for me, I wouldn't have spoken so fast.
Joan is having, obviously, a contemplative moment here as she's saying to herself,
Officer J. Jennings, shield number 45387. 2 weeks in the force and nary an arrest. No hidden runs, no errors, no foul plays or stealing.
Joan's narration for panel 2 of page 6 reads,
That afternoon on a cruising assignment.
Cruising, by this we think means Joan and another police officer out and about in a police car checking out what's happening in the city. We don't think it means anything else. Joan is standing, leaning against the police car, a young male police officer with her. Joan is saying, What
luck, being teamed with the only officer who dislikes cops in skirts.
Yep, he's got his notepad out, standing outside what looks like a bar. There's a bit of consternation, a lot of men in suits having expressions standing around. The young male cop is saying, While I'm upstairs investigating the accident, you can mend the rip in my night patrol belt, Betsy Ross. Oh, what a div. As he walks off, Joan, bizarrely, is thinking to herself,
Bob's really nice, but...
And then she notices,
Uh-oh, what's this? That starved-looking boy staring in the window and holding a brick means trouble.
Yes, we see a young lad standing outside a bakery with a brick in his hand behind his back. However, at the same time as Joan notices this, we see the manager of a pawn shop running from his establishment onto the pavement where he yells, Help! My shop! It's being robbed! Quick, lady! Find a cop! He says to Joan. Joan obviously replies,
What do I look like, a theatre usher?
We see Joan reaching into her handbag, presumably for her pistol, and then in the next panel, 2 ne'er-do-wells come sprinting out of the pawn shop, one guy wearing a purple suit with a brown cap, another guy in a green checked suit and a brown hat. Lots happens at once in the next panel. As Joan reaches into her bag for her gun, the bad guy in the purple suit uses his pistol and strikes the manager of the pawn shop on the back of his head, knocking him to the ground, saying,
"This is for trying to yell copper."
And his pal in the green suit then says, "Let's go, Spike. Here's the law in skirts," he says, because he's clocked Joan, obviously. The two bad guys move off in the next panel, but Spike grabs a hold of the boy who was standing with a brick outside the bakery, puts his hand round the boy's neck, starts firing towards Joan, saying,
"Stay put, Lady Copper. We're taking this kid for protection."
As the bullets start to fly, Joan says,
"You cowards! You know I can't fire because I might hit the boy."
Joan's narration picks up again at the top of page 7.
The shots brought Bob on the run, and soon...
Yep, Spike and his pal have jumped into a red motor car and they've driven off, with Joan and Bob following after, guns firing back and forth. Bob, the young cop, says, "Good shooting, Joan, but useless. You can't damage their special solid rubber tyres."
"I can't shoot higher, Bob. The boy is still with them."
In panel 2, we've left the city, a very well rendered country road. With a screech of brakes, Bob and Joan's patrol car leaves the road, climbing the fence, as Joan cries,
"Hold tight, Bob. One of our tyres is hit."
"Oh gosh," horrendous. Bob yells, "So is my left shoulder." The next panel we see the car is off the road. It looks like a real wreck. Bob still inside, looking very uncomfortable, and he says, "I'll radio headquarters for help, partner. I'm okay, just my shoulder." Joan, who's managed to get out of the car, says,
"Good. You hold the fort while I commandeer a ride. That boy's life may be in danger."
In the next panel we see that Joan has been successful in this plan. She's now being driven along by a man wearing a brown leather jacket, a brown cap, and he's saying to her, "Too bad I can't jockey this sand hack fast enough to overtake that low-frying crate with the solid rubber waffles." To which Joan says,
"I'm hip to your trucking lingo. My sergeant's brother taught it to me. Just keep the steamboat moving till I tell you to beach her, spinner."
And then in the next panel, we see that the chap who's given her a ride, very interestingly, he's driving a truck which is labelled in the back of the truck, Sand and Gravel Company, Los Angeles, and a clear registration number. So technically, Joan is being assisted by a sandman.
Yes, indeed. Another Golden Age Sandman.
Yes, so there was more than one Golden Age Sandman published by DC Comics. This is obviously long after Wesley's strip and Adventure Comics had finished, so adjust all your charts and figures and sheets and spreadsheets and things accordingly. From inside the truck, we hear,
"Clamp on the binders and throw out the anchor. That beanie in the road looks familiar, mister."
Yes, and we see that a hat is lying in the road, and obviously the brick that the boy was carrying as well is lying beside it, maybe to indicate to anyone following them that the car had gone in a particular direction. The Sandman replies, "Okay, you're the skipper. If them thugs are clammed up in that farmhouse, there's stormy weather ahead." We can see, indeed, there is a farmhouse at the top of the track. Joan gets out of the truck, the final panel of page 7, looking up at her new friend, she says,
"And here's the brick he held. Drive to the next town and notify the police. I'll try to stall the thugs until help arrives. Too bad I lost my gun in the wreck."
"This place has no address, but don't worry, miss, I'll mark it. Good luck." And he drives off. Joan approaches the house. We see her opening a door, looking inside and thinking,
The front door is unlocked. This must be the hideout because I recognise the crook's car in the backyard.
Excellent. She moves inside, exploring, and thinks to herself,
I'm in luck. No one around.
She finds the young lad. In the next panel, he's been tied to a chair with ropes. She sets about releasing him as the boy says, "Gee, am I glad to see you. My name's Billy. What are you? A lady cop?"
Take a drink.
Take a drink every... Jinx, take a drink every time someone says lady cop. Joan replies to Billy,
And I'm going to get you out of here. Where are those men?
And at that point, there's a click from the door behind them. I wonder if that's Billy Batson of this earth. Anyway, and we see that Spike and his pal have arrived. Spike in his purple suit and his pal in his green checked suit. Spike is saying,
"That'll hold them. I told you we should have ditched the kid earlier. Now we got the two of them on our hands."
"They've locked him in, listeners. Good grief." Spike's pal replies, "Yeah, but we needed the kid as a hostage. Maybe we better scram now." We then hear a knock at the door. We see an open bag on the table, the various other bits of stuff they've stolen. Spike's pal, on hearing the knock, says, "Somebody's at the door. Quick, hide the stuff. If it's cops, I'll get rid of them."
I'll cover the female flatfoot upstairs and see she don't give an alarm.
Spike's pal opens the door to see a senior policeman standing outside with another chap, which we guess is Bob, with his arm in a sling. The senior police officer, who Spike's pal opens the door to, says, "We've been informed that a policewoman is being held prisoner in this house." Spike's pal replies, "That ain't true. She was here. She left. said she made a mistake. Joan's narration resumes in the first panel of page 9.
While upstairs...
Yes, we see Joan is being confronted by Spike. Spike very dramatically lit as he says,
Not a peep out of you, sister, or I'll fill you so full of lead you'll sink. That goes for the kid, too.
Joan thinks to herself,
That brick I picked up, it's in my bag. Well, chin up, old man.
and with that, Joan swings her handbag up, which strikes Spike on the jaw, making him fire the gun above his head.
Blam!
And he goes down like a sack of spuds. The senior police officer and Bob arrive the next panel. The senior police officer says, Good work. We got the other mug downstairs and recovered the stolen goods. Bob says, If I hadn't lost my head, Joan, I'd take it off to one swell little lady in blue. You see Joan and Billy looking none the worse for wear. Joan then says in the next panel,
My signal worked then, didn't it?
Bob replies, We believed the mug when he said you'd left, but when we saw your luminescent patrol belt dangling from the window, we assumed you were being held prisoner. Now let's look back and see if there's any sign of that.
No.
No.
None at all.
Senior officer then cuts in with, And that truck driver with the jive jaw marked the house by dumping his load of gravel in the road. All of it. Good grief. Well, all's well that ends well. The next panel is a shot of Joan filling in her diary. The date is September the 15th, and the diary entry reads,
Thugs convicted, and my probation ended yesterday. Today I am a regular on the force. Bob and I will celebrate by visiting Billy at the free recreation camp operated by the Deputy Auxiliary Police Service. P.S. Billy has gained 12 pounds. Honestly.
Well, that's good. Things are going well for Billy. That's great. We reach the final panel of the story. Joan looking resplendent in a very, very exciting scarlet sleeved and trouser ensemble. We can see her pen and her diary in front of her on her desk as she addresses the reader and says,
That's only my story, but the diaries of other loyal lady cops are being written every day on police blotters across the entire nation.
And a small caption reads,
The end.
Well, that was great, wasn't it?
I loved that.
I enjoyed that very much. Old-fashioned crime stories are tremendous. I love the character of the truck-driving Sandman guy. He was hilarious.
With his vernacular, yes.
Yes.
No, that was very exciting, yes.
I'm pleased that Joan was able to maintain a relationship with Belle. It's good to keep in touch with pals and stuff from previous sort of situations. It's good to have that continuity in life, I think.
Absolutely. And this feels kind of revolutionary, almost, for the time. It's very different. It reminds me a bit of some of the Wonder Woman stories from the time and how progressive they were. Because usually it's just filled with the usual damsel in distress, for lack of a better expression.
Sure.
Whereas this actually is a good female protagonist. And I do love the the public service narrative right in the middle from Chief Olsen, where he literally looks at the reader and says, any healthy, active young woman between 23 and 31 should consider such a... By the way, retirement after 20 years. Yes, please.
Yes. No, that's good. So, I mean, it shows, like, in a way, these comics are sort of like, this is post-war. Obviously, the country's recovering. Obviously, a lot of men died during the war.
Yeah.
There probably were some guys who were in the police force that went off to serve and didn't come back. So I can imagine there probably was quite a concerted effort for sort of recruitment and I suppose replacing them. So it's a very positive, forward-looking attitude that this comic from 1949 is showing, encouraging women to sort of join the police force and be an active part. There's no sort of a woman's place is in the home or get back to your kitchens or anything. It's very, very, very positive. It's a delight to read, actually.
And it doesn't gloss over the inherent sexism of the time either.
This is true.
Okay, look at this and then compare it with the first issue Special Lady Cop. They are very similar in tone, in that it's so unusual to see a lady police officer,
Yes, exactly. And that's, 25 years later? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's weird, but how little had actually progressed. But this really feels revolutionary. And also, we need to talk about the art here, because Dan Barry's art in this is fantastic.
Yes, strong agree. It's gorgeous.
Filled with action. The panel layout and storytelling is great. The diary motif, basically, we don't have captions, we literally just cut back to Joan's diary, is great. Yeah. It feels fresh, although admittedly, because it's written in italics, some of the entries are a little bit harder to read than others. Let's be honest. Joan's handwriting is not the best.
Well, it's very rare to see that type of cursive scripting being used for captions. It's a bit of a mold breaker. I mean, it reminds me of some of the later issues of Starman. I mean, the James Robinson Starman, obviously.
Yes, of course.
There is tons of that style of captioning in that with the Hamilton Drew stuff and some of the Shade stories. It's it's a bit of a pain, I agree with you. Of course, Peter and I, with our having worked in banks in our youth, were very good at deciphering shocking handwriting.
Mm-hmm.
So it could have been worse. It could have been harder.
I'm so good at deciphering shocking handwriting that I decided to adopt shocking handwriting for myself.
Oh, well done.
Seriously, I really enjoyed this.
Mm-hmm.
Joan was fantastic as a character. Very, I don't want to say believable, but very relatable,
Sure.
I would say. And all the other characters around her and how they react are great. I want to know the story behind the blonde woman at the police academy.
Yes.
Because she's got a story. Let's just check her dialogue again. I hope I can avenge my brother's death. He was shot by a gangster. Now, is that not crying out for a series all to itself?
Oh, yeah, very much so. I mean, I thought that myself when I was reading it. Like, there's a lot of potential. There could have been a whole lady cop book on its own.
Yeah.
With stories of women in the police service and all that sort of stuff. It's a real shame that there wasn't. It's a real shame they didn't do more with the 70s character. Yeah.
I mean, if this had been the first story in the issue, imagine that had been like the second story.
Yeah.
In Gangbusters, that issue, that'd be amazing. Just like all following on. They don't all have to be female police officers. It could have been just whoever graduated from that academy year.
Sure.
You meet them all in the first chapter. That'd have been really cool.
Yeah, it would have been. I agree with you. I strongly agree. It's interesting because, I mean, it's maybe another way of trying to appeal to the audience as well. You know, there could be someone out there that suffered a bit of badness, for want of a better way of putting it, and this is encouraging them to do something about it. It's very positive. It's very socially positive. It's very constructive. It's fascinating to read, and it shows aspects of the repair of society that was going on in the years after the war. You know, and this, bear in mind, being published in 1949, the JSA, when did I say this was published? February 49. So the JSA's got to the end of 1950 before they stopped. You know, this is...
Yeah.
Superheroes are on the way out.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting just to take into account, like, Gangbusters issue 9, but other crime comics would have been coming in, the Western comics would have been coming in, the All-Star Comics has got a year and a half left before it turns into All-Star Western. You know, it's a really interesting snapshot into a very interesting time in American history.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like a World War II hangover, where things are kind of like recessing, they're not entirely sure what we're doing, and the whole world's basically shaken by the events, and it's a case of rebuilding. And obviously during the war, people found new skills, which is great because he did have suddenly all these women who were, previous to that, they were expected to be at home looking after the kids, making the meals, but during the war they were like building torpedoes.
Of course, as we were saying,
you know, they were doing active stuff, which, you know, because funnily enough, they're people and they can do the same things that other people can do.
Exactly.
But the attitude was different then, and it's great to see it building on this. It's fantastic.
It's fascinating to think that there really is only 25 years between this appearance and the first issue special appearance.
Yeah.
You know, you and I were of an age that can, you know, our parents and grandparents and stuff had very strong memories of when World War II was happening, all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It's fascinating just to think about how short a period of time it actually is. I mean, there was massive cultural change between 1949 and 1975.
Oh, without a doubt, yeah.
And, you know, maybe arguably nowhere near as much in the last 25 years, I would think, in comparison. It's an interesting one to sort of think about. And this conversation and this discussion on this story has taken a very interesting turn that I was not anticipating. Interesting. Interesting.
It's such a shame that because this is a gangbuster story, that these stories won't be reprinted and they won't be collected, because there's great storytelling. There's just fantastic stories, let's be honest. And they're really enjoyable, but they're not going to be collected anytime because obviously it was a licensed property, and like Big Town, unless they like change the names of everyone and everything,
right?
You know, it's not going to happen.
I can't remember from when we did the previous story if there was recurring characters in the Gangbusters comic or not. I guess it was a license thing, but unless maybe it's just the name, I don't know. It'd be
maybe
it's one of these things that, you know, DC are just about to launch this DC's Finest sort of range, and it's reprinting so much stuff that we've already had reprinted a million times, and it's like, come on, guys, dig a little deeper.
But they're reprinting some brand new stuff as well, which is great.
Well, this is true. I mean, there is some good stuff coming, but it's like a lot of it is just like, you know, come on again, dig deep, guys. Give us, if you're listening, DC Comics, give us some Gangbusters, give us some Tornado Twins, give us some Matt Savage Trail Boss, give us bloomin' Johnny Quick, you know?
Can you imagine?
I'm imagining it right now.
Yeah.
Jinx. So, I mean, one good thing, I mean, I'm really glad you spotted this comic because, you know, it's let us do this first Road to episode. There will be a couple more Road to episodes in advance of the Dr. Fate and Starman issue, the first issue special. I'm really glad you spotted this because, you know, it's nice just to do something else that isn't just another superhero story.
Yeah. And also, it's a snapshot of the time because as you said, superhero stories are on the wane, and we're just before you get the whole Wertham witch hunt that says comics are bad.
Yep.
And crime stories were one of the things that he said was bad. If it showed law officers in a bad light, then it's bad. And, this doesn't show them in a brilliant light. A bit of sexism and stuff, but that'd be allowed at the time, I'm sure. So it probably would have passed.
Yeah, but it does show some very positive stuff in that it's showing that, as we've said, women could be doing this. She does get the support from her own officers when she's in trouble. It's not like they leave her to kind of have to deal with it all herself. And it shows that it's given her a fairly, upwardly mobile, sort of attractive lifestyle. It's a really great PR piece for sort of, encouraging positive living. Mm-hmm. And it's fascinating. Out of the 3 stories that we've done in this episode, which one's your favourite?
Oof, good question. I really enjoyed the Batman one, I'll be honest. It was ridiculous, as there aren't any chance to do the Adam West.
Yes.
It's always good. But do you know what? See, this one, I think this one might just edge it, just because it is so different.
Oh, yeah. The Jimmy story was great fun, but it's that very disposable sort of Superman reset sort of thing.
Yeah.
The Batman one was great because it let us do some of the, what I always call proper Batman stuff. But this one, I think probably just by being different to what we normally do and just because it had so much to talk about and discuss, and it resonates in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. The Lady Cop story is definitely my favourite of this episode.
And for 1949 as well, it's very mature. It's very forward-thinking. One thing I would have loved is if someone had remembered this story and they had made Joan Lisa's police captain, perhaps.
No, that would have been a bit Roy Thomas, let's be honest.
That'd have been fun.
Yeah, it would have been good. And maybe when you and I write our DC comic, we'll write a period piece and we'll get a lady of our acquaintance in to advise, or maybe we'll arrange for a lady of our acquaintance to write some adventures of both Lady Cops, and maybe they could team up. And
there we are.
There'd be a crossover when Golden Age Lady Cop from Earth 2 meets the Lady Cop from Earth 1 who appeared in first issue special, and it'd be amazing.
Listeners, do you want to hear Lady Cops of Two Worlds? Please write in and let us know.
Yes.
You can email us at theearth2podcast@gmail.com. Make sure you follow us on social media because we're putting up some lovely bonus material for this and indeed every episode. On Facebook and Instagram, we're at the Earth2 Podcast. And on Twitter, because that's what we're still calling it, we're at podcast_Earth2, and it is the number 2 for all of our socials.
It certainly is. As I will say at this point, if you're feeling generous, go to wherever it is you receive your podcast and give us a positive review. That'd be lovely. Go to our link tree and you can find our coffee page and buy Peter the price of a beverage, which would be nice. Mm-hmm. Failing that, just tell your pals, spread the word, and make sure you join us next week as we read issue 5, Jack Kirby's Manhunter. It's the first of the revived Golden Age heroes to appear in first issue special. I need to dig mine out, actually. At the moment, it's still in one of the big boxes out in the hallway of all the stuff that we're going to do.
I just reread it today. It's awesome.
I'm going to go and dig it out right now in advance.
On that bombshell, I've been Peter.
And I've been David. We'll see you soon on the Earth2 Podcast.
Transmatter cube activated. Return coordinates set for Earth Prime.
Yes, Slade is approaching, and as he walks up, Slade is thinking, he's ripe for plucking. After all the share pies and cons I steer him clear of, he'll...
Sharpies.
What did I say?
Share pies.
Of course I did. The hyphening...
It's a weird word to do, though.
It's the hyphening, isn't it?
Yeah.
Desperately, the two prisoners resort to their one hope of rescue.
Yeah, they're burning the money. We hear another whoosh. Lois says, Superman went past again. Throw on another $100,000. You've got money to burn. See, Jimmy...
You better say that without laughing.
Oh, no, sorry.
So first issue special, issue 3, featured Metamorpho, the elephant man.
The elephant man. I am a man, you know. Come now, Doctor, not the 9 o'clock news. In the next panel, we see that Joan has been successful in this plan. She's now being driven along by a man wearing a brown leather jacket, a brown cap, and he's saying to her, "Too bad I can't jockey this sand hack fast enough to overtake that low-frying crate with the solid rubber waffles." To which Joan says, "Could you tell me that in English, please?"